Hello, my Wolfpack Charlie Black 20 back again, and today I am doing a video that I've been doing some research on for the past few days because it came into my mind about after the Nuremberg trials that I wanted to cover good men. And by good men, I mean good men of the Nazi Party. Now, know that sounds like an oxymoron, but let me assure you there were men of the Nazi Party and of Germany who were good men at heart, even if they did go along with or participate as members of the Nazi Party. The best example everybody knows, of course, is Oskar Schindler, where the movie Schindler's List was made, um, covering this German who was a member of the Nazi Party who saved almost 1,200 Jewish lives in his factory. That's the biggest story everybody knows about. He's been commemorated, the movie made about him, biographies, lectures, lots. But today, I'm going to be covering three Nazis who did their best to save lives and do good for the world at heart. So, the first one is going to be one that had a movie made about him, but it can only be played in Europe or on streaming services. His name was John Robb. Uh, he was a very interesting man. Somehow, he ended up becoming a German emigre to China. Part of it was his sense of adventure. Another was businesses that he was part of, Siemens, Siemans. And he and his wife went to China. When Hitler took power, that's where they were. But Robb supported Hitler and became a member of the Nazi Party. I forget exactly which year, but it was definitely after Hitler came to power. But they were loyal Germans. They joined the Nazi Party, and he was stationed in Nanking or Nanjing, China, when the Japanese took over the city in an attack, and you have the Nanking Massacre, which is probably the most well-known Japanese atrocity to happen on Chinese soil or possibly any soil during the uh, build up to World War II. So during the Nanking Massacre, hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians and unarmed prisoners were slaughtered, raped, tortured, beheaded, put on stakes, burned alive. Every atrocity you can think of, the Japanese did. Rape was their weapon of terror against women, as well as a way for their soldiers to savor the fruits of victory. It went on for weeks. But during that time, John Robb, as well as many other Europeans in the city, as well as any Chinese officials they could persuade to stay, formed what they called a Committee of International Safety. I believe that's what it was called. Forgive me if I get it wrong. But they created this and created what is known as the International Safety Zone, where you had entries that were, you had a zone that was off limits to the Japanese soldier, to the Japanese military. It was considered a neutral zone for civilians and anybody who just needed protection. Many Japanese soldiers ignored the boundary, went in there, took women, took Chinese prisoners, soldiers who had thrown away their weapons, and took them out of the zone to kill them or rape them. And this wasn't a one-off incident. This happened many, many times. And John Robb, throughout this whole thing, he's the main pusher and person behind the international safety zone. And many men, including a American and a German Jew, um, came to admire him for his determination, his humanity, because and his unceasing energy to stop these atrocities from happening. So what John Robb does is he's writing to Adolf Hitler personally. He's writing to the Nazi party, to the German embassy, and he's displaying the Nazi flag for the Japanese to see, saying this is a neutral power. You can't be doing this. And eventually he himself puts on his Nazi uniform, goes out there, and starts wherever he finds Japanese soldiers raping or hurting or torturing civilians. He starts berating them in German and whatever he can to get them to cease and desist. He speaks to Japanese commanders, Japanese officers, and they all, even if they only stop at that moment, they do listen to him. Now, throughout this time, Robb is putting his faith in Adolf Hitler to stop this, that Adolf Hitler will not allow these atrocities to take place, that he's writing these letters detailing everything happening, every atrocity he sees, all the horrible things he's seeing. Robb doesn't understand that Hitler has, although he's been supporting the Chinese against the Japanese, he now switches and starts supporting the Japanese, and he doesn't care what the Japanese are doing to the civilians because to him it's normal that the Japanese are doing this because it's eventually what Hitler is going to do to the people he deems inferior, which he says is the natural order of things. Eventually, the massacre is stopped. Japanese commanders get their men under control. And through many reasons, mainly Japanese complaining about Robb is recalled to Germany. When he leaves, he and his International Safety Zoning Committee have saved 250 to 300,000 Chinese lives in the International Safety Zone. And this won't be forgotten by the people there. So Robb gets back to Germany. He has evidence of what has happened. He's got his personal diaries, and he's got film footage, which he proceeds to show to various members of the Nazi Party in meetings, some secret, some not. When the Gestapo hear about this, they come to him, they quote-unquote interview him, and they allow him to leave because he is shown to be nothing but a loyal German of the Nazi Party. They put him at a desk job and confiscate the films, although they do not touch his journals. He is forbidden to speak about what he has seen or anything about it. When the war ends, there is a denazification trial for him, and because he was seen as a high-ranking member of his local Nazi party, he is deemed ineligible for many things, many jobs, many services, pension, and he and his wife very quickly fall into poverty and into malnutrition, which is a very serious risk for people, for the German people after 1945, because they are literally starving. The only thing that keeps him and his wife from completely starving to death are packages arriving from abroad marked China and King. A lot of Chinese people named their sons John Robb after this when he left. They would send him food, money, just enough to keep him and his wife from dying, keeping them afloat. Robb never sought recognition for what he did. So he was a good man who idealized the wrong leader. That's all. In his case, at least. And suffered for being a good man in the end. of the Nazi Party. The next person, the next good Nazi, was a man named Hans Munch. A little more well known. He was a German who grew up in the Weimar Republic, but did not have a great feeling about the Nazis, was never a very big supporter, never didn't join the Nazi Party until very, very late. I think it was in 1940 that he joined. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I will double check it. Um, and he basically joined because he needed a job and he thought it would help his career. And he was a doctor by trade. And he eventually was sent to the concentration camp Auschwitz, which would later become a death camp and concentration camp. And when he got there, what you're expected to do, apparently, was you were supposed to swear an oath to the Nazi Party over your Hippocratic oath as a doctor. Hans Munch apparently did not have to or refused to. Through this convoluted chain of Nazi command, he was either exempted or he just outright refused to do so. When he saw what Auschwitz was, he would put in requests for food, to get more food for the prisoners, to get decent food for people. He would hand out food to various people within his sphere of influence in the camp. He would give fake diagnoses to bring Jews in under his wing. He would pretend to inject them with diseases, while instead injecting them with saline. He treated them like people. He would give them handshakes. He would refer to them as Mr. or Mrs. Doctor. And I think most importantly, he refused to participate in the selection process, whereby people who were getting off the trains would be told go left or right. That meant life or death, either working to death or going straight to the gas chambers. He said he refused to participate, and due to the chain of command, he was able to get an exemption, even though there weren't supposed to be any exceptions. Hans Munch never sought recognition for what he did, same as John Robb. When the war was ending, he left Auschwitz after making sure that he left some supplies for the people he had saved in the camp. He was eventually arrested after the war ended and brought to Poland, where the Poles had their own quote-unquote Nuremberg trial. And most of their criminals that they had, most of the indictments were against people directly involved in the concentration camps and the death camps. So they tried the commandant of Auschwitz, they tried Amon Guth, who we see in Schindler's List as the commandant on Plazow, and many others. Hans Munch was one of them as well. But the tribunal heard many witnesses, both Jewish and non-Jewish, testify in his defense, saying, no, he was a good man in a bad place. He did what he could to help us. He saved our lives in many ways. At this tribunal, Hans Munch is the only person acquitted. He's the only one. They said he showed decency. He did not show inhumanity like the rest of these people did. These people showed cruelty. He did not. And therefore he was acquitted. He never sought recognition for that. Never. He would speak to Holocaust survivors, and it would eventually also testify against other Nazis in other trials that took place in Germany against camp guards, especially at the Frankfurt Auschwitz trial. He would testify what the camp was like and what the fellow defendants were like. He would give expert testimony, we would call it. And he was a decent man who kept his Hippocratic oath at a time when most of the German doctors never did. and definitely did not in Auschwitz. Now, the last man is a man by the name of Kurt Gerstein. Very little known to people outside of Holocaust studies. But he was a devout Christian. And even though he joined the Nazi Party in 1934 or 5, he remained a devout Christian, and he hated that the Nazis were trying to oppress the church, that they were trying to put the church under state control. He hated it. And that got him kicked out of the Nazi Party at one point. His family and himself managed to get him back in by writing a letter saying he was loyal to the party. It had been indiscreet of him. He had understood now what he was doing was wrong, especially because he had spent about 6 weeks in a concentration camp. So he rejoined the Nazi Party, and through several connections, he's made part of the SS as a technician. He assures many of his colleagues, don't look at the uniform. The man underneath it hasn't changed. He says, I'm going to change it and expose it from within, this criminal government, this criminal conspiracy. And eventually, because of his skills as a technician, he is told that under penalty of death, he is to take a secret load to a camp at a place called Belzec. He's to take a large portion, a large cargo of Zyklon B gas to Belzec and to watch the operation of the camp to decide what they're going to do, whether they're going to replace the gas they're presently using, carbon monoxide, or switch over to Zyklon B, which is being used at Auschwitz. This is in early 1942. So, before he arrives at Belzec, he pretends that when they pull over, that one of the canisters of Zyklon B has broken and they have to bury the dangerous material. As a technician, the driver and others don't question him, so they quickly bury the gas. And that's the excuse he puts in his report, his official report. When he gets to Belzec, he he witnesses the gas chamber in action. A train and load of Jews are brought into Belzec. They are taken off the train, given the speech that they're going to be resettled, given work. They have to be deloused. And then they are stripped naked. All their valuables are stolen. Their hair is cut. And the Ukrainian guards and SS personnel whip and beat them into the gas chamber. Gernstein describes how at that moment the diesel engines malfunctioned, and for 2 hours the Jews were stuck in there pleading for help, pleading to be let out. And eventually they got the engine working, and within half an hour they opened the and Gernstein sees the commandant of Belzec, Wirth, point to a can full of Jewish gold teeth, saying, we got so much, hear the rattle, it's almost full already, and this is just one train load. And then there's 2 gold coins on the ground that Wirth sees and Gernstein sees. Wirth just picks them up and puts them in his pocket. Gernstein On his train ride back to Germany, he encounters a dignitary from Sweden and breaks down and tells him everything, pleads with him, begs him to let the world know, let the Allies know what is going on, bomb the camps, do something. This man agrees to do exactly that. It goes through the proper channels, this information. It gets to the British, and it's suppressed because they don't believe that anyone will believe this is happening, that it can't be true, and even if it is true, nobody will believe it. It's just too horrible to believe. Gernstein continues to work within the Nazi machine. Everywhere he's sent with gas, he pretends that something happened to the gas on the way or they got into an accident. He literally crashes the car at one point to make it seem as though the gas was damaged or that the cargo was in danger of leaking, so they have to get rid of it. But it's a tiny thing he can do. It's tiny, infinitesimal compared to the machinery of death that the Nazis have concocted. He also tries to get a meeting with the local papal nuncio of the Catholic Church, I believe. He's denied. They don't see him. He goes to other priests and tells them what he's seen. One priest wants to immediately go to the pulpit and say something. Gernstein says, "You can't. They'll know I told you. And then it will be the two of us being put our necks in ropes, and nobody will care. We'll just be two more dead people." Many times Gernstein is found by colleagues, drunk or with a pistol in his mouth. He just can't, he wants to die from the horror he's seen, but he also wants to expose what has been done. In February 1945, he deserts his posts and goes and surrenders to the French. He tells them everything he knows. He gives them the information, tells them where they can find a lot of his papers. And many of them are very interested in what he has to say at first. But then they think that there are some inconsistencies in his story. So they decide that the higher-ups decide he's going to be tried as a war criminal along with other SS that we've captured around here. When Gernstein is told of this, he's in isolation with other SS men. He's in a cell. A lot of people think he gave in to despair and hanged himself because he is found hanging by the neck a few mornings later. But there is another theory, and I actually put my money on this one, that other SS men as prisoners knew he was telling things that they didn't want told, that he could name names and he was willing to do it, or that he had betrayed their SS oath. So very likely they killed him to keep him quiet and made it look like a suicide, because they said that his body during autopsy had lots of bruises and broken bones. Who knows? I think it's more likely he was murdered by fellow SS to keep him quiet. But as I said, he was a man who did his best in a horrible circumstance and did what he could in his power as a quote-unquote good Nazi. So that's what the Nuremberg trial videos got me thinking about, and I'm glad I got it out in this video, guys. So I will put some links in the description for more information on these men. So take care, my wolf pack.